Well, in my class, which is called Socio-Psychological Approaches to Conflict Management and Conflict Resolution, the students will learn about different social psychological theories about conflicts, about conflict resolutions, to some degree what may constitute barriers to conflict resolutions, or factors that might ameliorate conflict resolutions, and we learn to understand conflicts from a social psychological perspective and be able to analyze and understand conflicts from this perspective as well. So one of the basic premises of the social psychology of conflict resolution is that conflict is not only about the issues at stake, but the reasons for why conflicts might be resolved or why conflicts continue are often psychological. Okay, so for example, in a famous research on the phenomenon of reactive devaluation, a proposal was put forth to Israeli participants about water development and sharing in this Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the participants were asked to respond to this proposal. Now, in one experimental condition, this proposal was said to come from the Palestinian side, while in the other experimental condition it was said to come from the Israeli side. So when the proposal was said to come from the Palestinian side, the proposal was devalued and seen as much less attractive than if it came from the Israeli side, although the actual proposal was the same. So this is a good example of how it's not the actual content of the proposal that determined the responses of the participants, but actually the perceived source of the proposal. So, why is this area important? Well, to understand cross-cultural psychology, and more generally to understand cross-cultural differences, can have an indirect importance on conflict resolution by enabling and improving interpersonal communication between people from different cultures, and it can also have a more direct importance on the negotiation process and the creation of alliances between different countries. The failure to understand cross-cultural differences can lead to people becoming insulted or taking offense for things that are due to cross-cultural misunderstandings, and can have a very costly price in conflict resolution. So this area has focused mainly on finding different kinds of dimensions on which you can compare different cultures. So there have been a lot of different suggestions for on what dimensions cultures can differ. And we're not going to talk about all of them. We're going to talk about the most central ones in the social psychology. The first one, which is perhaps the most famous one, between collectivism and individualism. What we also discussed here in one of the student presentations, the division between tight and loose cultures. There's also a differentiation between high context cultures and low context cultures, and honor cultures and dignity cultures and face cultures, and so on. So today we're going to talk about these two things. First of all, the differentiation between collectivism and individualism, and our main focus today will be on honor, dignity, and face cultures. So let's first have a look at collectivism and individualism. We'll go over it fairly quickly. So this division was actually based originally in organizational psychology. IBM commissioned Dutch sociologist Geert Hofstede to do a study on all their employees across the globe, about 700 employees in different countries. And based on this research, he came up with 4 different dimensions on which he hypothesized that cultures differ. So the first one being power distance, the extent to which less powerful members of institutions accept that power is distributed unequally. Uncertainty avoidance, how threatened you feel by ambiguous situations, how much you feel that you need certainty and clear answers. What he termed as masculinity and femininity, by which he means what the dominant values in society are, what you strive to achieve in society, whether it's more material things like success and money and material things, which he refers to as masculinity, or whether it's more what you would normally call soft values, like caring for others and have a high quality of life, which he refers to as feminine or femininity values. And then the differentiation which became the most influential and which has had the most impact on this field of cross-cultural psychology is the differentiation between individualism and collectivism. And so this differentiation basically talks about whose interests are more important. If the interests of the individual and the group are in conflict with each other, whose interests are given precedence? So in individualist culture, the interest of the individual is given precedence over the goals of the group. And in collectivist cultures, the interests of the group are given precedence over the interests of the individual. This is the main gist of this differentiation. So this differentiation is often used to differentiate between different countries in the world. So what's usually referred to as individualistic cultures, it's basically countries in West Europe, as well as in North America and other English-speaking countries like Australia and New Zealand. And then collectivist is just, it's the rest, the rest of the world. Okay? So this is part of what's been criticized also about this differentiation, that it's too broad and too ambiguous, and puts together Far East cultures together with the Middle Eastern cultures as well as the Southern American cultures. So there are obviously a lot of differences between all these different cultures, but it might still be true that in all these countries there's a tendency to give precedence to the interests of the collective as a whole over the interests of the individual. Okay, so this differentiation has some importance for how you view conflict resolution, how you think that conflict resolution should be achieved. So first of all, whether or not conflict is something that's natural, something that's unavoidable, something that's perhaps even positive, or whether it's something that should be avoided at any cost. So in individualist culture, if you see if you put individual interest in the center, then it's going to be an almost unavoidable element of human interaction, because you have all these individuals interacting and they all have different interests and they all put these interests in the forefront, so conflict is going to happen. It's a natural part of human interaction. While if in collectivist cultures, social conflict is seen as upsetting the social harmony. It's seen as some kind of failure to maintain this social harmony that is supposed to take place in a functioning society. So, in an individualist culture, the conflicts might be unpleasant, but they are actually also sometimes necessary or perhaps even positive, because through conflict or through trying to find compromises or through competition, people might develop, there might be social change, in society there might be personal change, while in collectivist culture the tendency is to see social conflict as inherently negative. So this also affects the way that you think that conflicts should be resolved. So it follows from this view that conflicts are something that between individuals, it's a natural part of social interaction. So these disputes should be resolved between the conflicting parties. Okay? They should work it out, find some kind of compromise, and resolve it this way. In collectivist cultures, on the other hand, in order to maintain this social harmony, it would be preferable then to let an accepted authority resolve the conflict for these two conflicting parties. Because this is a way to avoid direct conflict between them. So they both accept this authority, and they put the authority over to him to find a proper solution to the conflict.